There are new bombshell claims today from royal insiders who say King Charles's cancer is incurable and he will likely die with the disease.
Prince William did not enter the room as a son seeking sympathy. He entered as the future king carrying a truth that could no longer remain locked behind palace doors. In his hands was a confidential medical file concerning King Charles, a document concealed from senior members of the royal family for months. When William finally confirmed what it contained, the announcement did more than expose a secret. It shattered the illusion that the monarchy remained firmly in control. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William crossed the late evening briefing room at Kensington Palace without greeting anyone. The sealed folder carried a restricted access mark, meaning only selected royal officials could examine it. Every telephone had been removed, and Camilla watched the prince grip a chair before he finally spoke. The truth landed hard. Charles' hidden file described recurring complications serious enough for doctors to demand an immediate reduction in his workload. It also contained a contingency plan, an emergency arrangement, transferring several constitutional responsibilities from the monarch to the Prince of Wales, the direct heir. William opened the folder with visible effort. Doctors had advised shorter ceremonies, fewer journeys, and strict limits on prolonged state duties. He sounded controlled, yet every pause exposed the frightened son beneath the air. Camilla asked why she had been told the king's condition remained manageable, while officials prepared to redistribute his responsibilities. Her disbelief hardened into anger. The queen consort, the monarch's wife who supports his public duties without holding constitutional power, demanded to know who had excluded her. William turned another page and found something worse. One consultation note recorded that Charles had personally resisted giving his son the complete assessment. Suspicion deepened when the prince reached the final section. Doctors had approved the contingency plan, yet its signature page was missing. William placed the unsigned sheet on the table and asked who had delayed the process. No one answered. The silence suggested someone had deliberately buried the warning completely. Charles received the news through a recorded telephone briefing from his private secretary. The king listened as the official confirmed William had disclosed the file. He remained silent for several seconds, then lowered the receiver without saying goodbye. William stared at the missing page and understood the medical revelation was only half the crisis. Somewhere inside the royal household, a warning had been concealed. Worse, Charles had allowed the silence to continue. As the palace absorbed the shock, attention shifted toward a weakened king, an excluded wife, and a son being pushed toward the throne before he was emotionally ready. The secret file was medical in language, but its true consequences were painfully human. Charles feared becoming a monarch remembered for weakness. Camilla feared losing both her husband and the position she had fought decades to secure. William faced the cruelest burden of all. Protecting the crown might require him to take authority from his own father. Behind the formal titles stood three people confronting the same terrifying reality from completely different sides. Charles sat alone with the file in his private study and read the recommendation again. Kingship had shaped every decade of his adult life, turning duty into identity and endurance into proof of worth. The crown, the institution embodied by Britain's sovereign, was not merely an office to him. It was the purpose he had waited years to fulfill. For Charles, reducing that duty felt less like recovery and more like surrendering the dream that had sustained him. He closed the folder and pushed it across the desk, as though distance could weaken its command. William carried a different burden. As Prince of Wales, the title traditionally held by the monarch's direct heir, he already represented the crown at major ceremonies and meetings. Every engagement Charles postponed placed another responsibility on his shoulders. Yet every duty the prince accepted risked making concern look like ambition. That fear sharpened when a documented medical briefing showed that his father had attended 2 exhausting events after doctors privately ordered rest. Singh's Camilla confronted the senior physician before the morning ended. She demanded the complete assessment, then fell silent when he explained that Charles had personally requested a shortened version for her. Anger left the queen consort almost at once. Hurt replaced it. The man she had defended through decades of judgment had hidden the truth, not from the public alone, but from the woman beside him. Catherine noticed the change in William during a private conversation outside the family rooms. He no longer asked whether intervention was justified. He asked how quickly it could happen without humiliating the king. She took his hand, and warned that protecting Charles might require accepting his anger. The future king withdrew his fingers, not in rejection, but because admitting she was right made the danger feel final. Unease now spread through every private discussion. Charles had ignored doctors, excluded Camilla, and limited what William was allowed to know. None of them could understand why. What frightened the monarch so deeply that he would risk his health, his marriage, and his son's trust to preserve the appearance of control? The answer lay months earlier, in one alarming incident that transformed a private concern into a secret the palace could no longer contain. Every royal crisis has a moment that later appears inevitable. For this one, it came during a closed rehearsal inside St. George's Hall, when Charles stopped in the middle of a ceremonial procession and could not continue. There were no cameras, no crowds, and no public explanation. Only William, Camilla, 2 physicians, and a handful of stunned aides witnessed the king reach for a chair as the color drained from his face. From that instant, silence became dangerous. 6 weeks before William's announcement, Charles had insisted on completing the full ceremonial route despite medical advice to shorten it. St. George's Hall, a grand state room used for formal royal occasions, had been sealed for the rehearsal. Palace staff expected precision, not panic. When the monarch paused, the internal record called it simple exhaustion, because stronger wording might have triggered formal constitutional planning about whether he could continue carrying out demanding duties. Then Charles lost his balance. He caught William's forearm and whispered that he could no longer feel steady enough to continue. The prince felt his father's full weight shift against him, and immediately ordered the doors closed. Camilla pulled a chair forward, while one physician checked the king, and the second cleared the room of unnecessary staff. William understood the truth before anyone spoke it aloud. Charles' public determination no longer matched his physical reality. Yet once the king recovered, he looked directly at his son and demanded that the incident never be described as a collapse. The future king agreed in the moment, but fear had already replaced obedience inside him. Camilla pleaded with her husband to cancel the following week's engagements. She reminded Charles that duty meant nothing if it destroyed him. He refused. The monarch told her that once the public saw hesitation, every future appearance would become a test of survival. His words silenced the queen consort, but they did not reassure her. A physician ordered an expanded medical review that same evening, through a documented clinical directive. That assessment became the hidden file, and its warning was far stronger than any earlier advice. Charles then instructed his private secretary to classify the complete report, meaning access would be restricted, and to give William only the revised schedule recommendations. The king believed secrecy would prevent panic. Instead, it left his heir dangerously uninformed. After everyone departed, William returned to the hall and found his father's ceremonial glove on the floor. He lifted it slowly, realizing Charles had been too shaken to notice it was missing. Weeks later, when the prince discovered the full report had existed, he did not request another briefing. He demanded a direct confrontation. The secret born in St. George's Hall now moved behind a locked door at Windsor, where father and son would finally speak without advisors, prepared statements, or the protection of royal protocol. There were no courtiers inside the room when William placed the hidden file on the table before Charles. There was only a father who believed secrecy had preserved his reign, and a son convinced that secrecy had endangered it. For several seconds, neither man sat down. The silence carried years of expectation, rivalry, loyalty, and unspoken fear. Then William asked the question the king had spent weeks avoiding: "Why did you not trust me?" Charles stood in his private sitting room at Windsor Castle and refused the chair. William had ordered every aide to remain outside, turning the meeting into a personal reckoning rather than a constitutional discussion, a formal debate about how royal authority should operate. The prince carried the complete medical file and the missing approval page. One glance told the monarch that his son understood the report had been deliberately restricted. William opened the folder and accused his father of confusing courage with responsibility. He kept his voice controlled until he mentioned the rehearsal. Then restraint finally cracked. The future king admitted how terrified he had felt when Charles lost his balance and placed his full weight against him. He had not seen a sovereign then. He had seen his father slipping beyond his reach. Charles answered with wounded force. The crown could not be governed by fear, he said. Concern could become speculation, and speculation could weaken a sovereign before doctors reached judgment. William had not learned, the king insisted, how quickly sympathy could turn into public doubt. Then the truth surfaced. Charles admitted that he had delayed the contingency plan himself. The arrangement, designed to transfer selected duties in an emergency, felt like an unofficial regency, a period when another person performs a monarch's functions without taking the throne. He feared every appearance would become evidence against his fitness to rule. William revealed that the delay had spread confusion. Some palace departments prepared for reduced duties, while others continued scheduling Charles as if no restrictions existed. The contradiction placed staff, doctors, and the monarchy at risk. Charles struck the table with his palm. "I remain king." William did not step back. He closed the file, met his father's eyes, and answered that being king did not make him invulnerable. Tears gathered in William's eyes, and the anger left Charles. The monarch reached toward his son, but the prince turned away before the gesture was completed. William left without reconciliation, determined to force the plan forward. Charles remained behind, preparing to test whether his authority could still stop him. What began as a private argument now became a struggle over royal power, controlled by those managing access, schedules, and constitutional procedure. Royal authority is displayed through crowns, uniforms, and ceremony, but it is exercised through calendars, signatures, briefings, and access. As Charles and William fought over the hidden medical file, a quieter battle unfolded among the officials responsible for keeping the monarchy functioning. One cancelled audience could be explained, 10 could not. One delayed signature might pass unnoticed. A pattern would expose everything. Behind polished doors, the machinery of the crown began choosing between the king's wishes and the doctor's warning. William demanded a formal review of the next 8 weeks of royal duties. The order forced every official to compare appearances against the concealed medical recommendations. The monarch's private secretary controlled access and decisions, the medical team judged what Charles could safely endure, and constitutional advisors protected the legal continuity of the crown. None could remove the king. Together, however, they could decide whether his schedule remained sustainable. Sir Adrian Mercer opened the review with dread. The fictional private secretary had obeyed Charles's command to restrict the report, believing loyalty required silence. Now he saw that silence had placed the sovereign and the institution at risk. A private secretary, the senior official who manages the monarch's work and communications, could delay information, but he could not erase its consequences. Camilla confronted Mercer in an antechamber. She asked why he had obeyed the secrecy order without warning her. He answered that Charles had spoken as sovereign, not as her husband. The queen consort recoiled at the distinction, then pressed him again. Mercer could not defend it without admitting that duty had been used to shut her out. The review exposed something worse. 3 major ceremonies had remained unchanged after doctors advised shorter appearances. Each time amendments were entered, someone restored the full schedule. William studied the pages until he found a handwritten notation beside every reversal. Charles had authorized them himself. Suspicion of a palace conspiracy collapsed. The king had become the greatest obstacle to his own protection. Mercer placed his resignation letter beside the review. William read it, folded it once, and handed it back. Resignation, the prince said, would punish the messenger while leaving the danger untouched. Relief crossed the secretary's face, followed by shame. He agreed to support the contingency plan, an emergency arrangement shifting selected duties, even if that meant defying the monarch he had served for years. By midnight, the household's machinery had shifted toward William. The first visible consequences could no longer be delayed. The decision would move from paper to reality the next morning, when a revised schedule reached Camilla, and she discovered that the life she shared with Charles had been reorganized without either of them giving consent. The first consequence did not arrive through a public announcement. It arrived on a cream-colored schedule placed beside Camilla's breakfast. 3 joint engagements had disappeared. A state reception had been reassigned to William and Catherine. Charles' audiences had been shortened, and every appearance now required written medical approval. The Queen read the page twice before setting down her cup. In that instant, she understood that the hidden file had already changed the monarchy, and that her husband was no longer controlling the change. Camilla read the revised royal diary again, and felt power slipping beyond her reach. A royal diary is the official schedule governing engagements, audiences, and travel. William would now conduct 2 investitures, ceremonies in which honors are formally presented, while Catherine would lead a diplomatic reception. Charles' travel outside London was suspended. Every new duty required approval from both the medical team and the prince's office. creating a dual control system no one had used before. That mattered because conflicting authority could paralyze the entire household during the very emergency the plan was designed to prevent. Camilla called William before breakfast ended. She accused him of using a medical crisis to seize authority over Charles' household. The future king stiffened at the charge. He told her he was not taking the king's life away. He was trying to stop duty from taking Charles away from all of them. The queen consort heard concern in his voice, but fear had already hardened into suspicion. Charles refused to sign the new schedule. He ordered every cancelled engagement restored, and commanded staff to follow his original instructions. The conflict now became dangerous. Palace officials held medical restrictions approved by William, while the sovereign issued direct orders against them. William received a documented warning from a constitutional advisor that continued resistance could trigger a formal capacity assessment, a legal process examining whether the monarch could perform specific duties. The prince recoiled. He wanted cooperation, not a public judgment questioning his father's ability to rule. Charles entered his office and stopped. Only 2 ceremonial red boxes waited instead of 4. These locked cases carry government papers requiring the sovereign's attention. He dismissed the attendant, shut the door with unusual force, and opened one box. The words blurred. The king removed his glasses and whispered, "They have already begun replacing me." Catherine understood that schedules and rules would only deepen the wound. She told William that protection was beginning to look like betrayal. The crisis had reached the limit of official solutions. Only one path remained. Charles and his son must meet privately, not as sovereign and heir, but as 2 frightened men facing the possibility of losing each other. The first consequence did not arrive through a public announcement. It arrived on a cream-colored schedule placed beside Camilla's breakfast. 3 joint engagements had disappeared. A state reception had been reassigned to William and Catherine. Charles' audiences had been shortened, and every appearance now required written medical approval. The queen read the page twice before setting down her cup. In that instant, she understood that the hidden file had already changed the monarchy, and that her husband was no longer controlling the change. Camilla read the revised program again, anger tightening around every missing engagement. The royal diary, the official schedule governing ceremonies, audiences, and travel, had been rewritten before she was consulted. William would conduct 2 investitures, formal ceremonies where honors are presented, while Catherine would lead a diplomatic reception. Charles would remain in London, and every new duty would require approval from his doctors and the prince's office. That dual control mattered because one disagreement could freeze the household when stability was most needed. Camilla called William before breakfast ended. She accused him of using a medical emergency to control Charles' household. The future king heard fear beneath the anger. Still, the charge cut deeply. He told her he was not taking the king's life away. He was trying to stop duty from taking Charles away from them. Charles refused to sign the revised schedule. The monarch ordered his original engagements restored, forcing staff to choose between the sovereign's command and the contingency arrangements supported by his heir. The conflict now threatened the chain of authority holding the palace together. William received a documented warning from a constitutional advisor. Continued resistance, the official explained, could trigger a formal capacity assessment, a legal process examining whether the king could perform specific duties. The prince recoiled. He wanted cooperation, not a public mechanism branding his father unfit. Charles entered his office and stopped. Only 2 ceremonial red boxes waited, instead of 4. Those locked cases carried government papers requiring the monarch's attention. He dismissed the attendant, closed the door with unusual force, and opened one box. The first page would not settle in his mind. The king removed his glasses and whispered, "They have already begun replacing me." Catherine learned those words through a recorded account from the attendant and immediately understood the danger. Rules and schedules were deepening the wound they were meant to heal. She told William that someone had to bring father and son together before protection became indistinguishable from betrayal. The crisis had reached the limit of official solutions. One path remained. Charles and William must meet privately, not as sovereign and heir, but as 2 men terrified of losing each other. By sunrise, the hidden medical file had escaped the walls of royal privacy and entered the national consciousness. The story was no longer about a confidential document. It was about whether a king had endangered himself to preserve the appearance of strength, whether an heir had crossed a line to protect him, and whether the crown could survive honesty. Across Britain, the reaction was fierce, divided, and deeply personal. Then one moment outside Buckingham Palace changed the emotional direction of the day. William watched the first broadcast beside Catherine and felt the weight of every word he had spoken. Television presenters described a possible struggle between father and son, while emergency newspaper editions questioned whether Charles had concealed too much. Buckingham Palace, the monarch's main official headquarters in London, released a written statement confirming that the king would remain sovereign while the prince assumed additional duties under an agreed medical plan. That detail mattered because it separated temporary support from an attempt to remove Charles. Public anger rose quickly. Some voices accused the palace of hiding information that affected national stability. Others defended the monarch's right to medical privacy and argued that illness did not erase dignity. William heard both sides, but the harshest commentary cut deeply. He admitted to Catherine that confirming the file might have exposed his father to the humiliation he had tried to prevent. She reminded him that silence would eventually have caused greater damage. Charles read the statement alone before approving its final release. The king insisted on adding one sentence confirming that he had personally accepted the new arrangement after a private meeting with his son. That line changed the story. It weakened claims of a forced transfer and showed that William had not acted behind the monarch's back. Camilla made her own decision through a recorded palace planning call. She agreed to stand beside William and Catherine at the next public engagement. The queen consort understood that appearing apart would feed the image of a divided family. Her presence would not erase the conflict, but it would prove that the household had chosen unity over suspicion. Outside Buckingham Palace, rain fell as a small crowd gathered beneath umbrellas. One woman stepped forward and placed a handwritten card near the gates. It read, "A king is still a man, let him heal." Broadcasters returned to that message throughout the day, and the anger surrounding the story began to soften. By evening, one presenter described the crisis not as an abdication battle, but as the monarchy's first major test of openness. The final answer, however, still depended on Charles, William, and Camilla facing the public together and proving whether the hidden file had divided the crown or forced it to become stronger. 3 days after the revelation, Charles stepped forward with William on one side and Camilla on the other. His schedule had changed. His authority had not vanished. The king looked tired, but he did not look defeated. Beside him stood the son who had exposed the secret, and the wife who had feared being pushed aside by it. The hidden medical file had threatened to break the family. Instead, it forced them to stop protecting one another through silence. Charles entered the shortened reception under the medical plan he had finally approved. The arrangement allowed William to carry the heavier ceremonial burden, while the monarch retained final authority over constitutional decisions. The official acts required of Britain's sovereign. This balance mattered because it protected the king's health without creating the impression that his reign had already ended. William remained close without trying to command the moment. Before the doors opened, Charles thanked his son for refusing to let pride become a danger. The prince answered that he had never wanted more power. He had wanted more time with his father. The words ended the rivalry that fear had created between them. Camilla faced her own truth. She admitted during a recorded private family conversation that her anger toward William had come from terror, not ambition. The queen consort accepted the new structure after Charles promised that she would never again be excluded from major medical discussions. Her place beside him was no longer defended through control. It was secured through trust. The missing approval page carried the final weight. Charles signed it and ordered it placed in the Royal Archive, the official collection preserving important records of the monarchy. That signature ended the secrecy surrounding the contingency plan and confirmed that William's greater role had been accepted, not seized. William then rejected calls for a wider transfer of authority. His refusal proved that the disclosure had never been designed to accelerate succession. The future king had acted to protect his father, even when protection risked being mistaken for betrayal. Charles reached the end of the reception and began to leave alone. Then he stopped. The king waited until William joined him, while Camilla moved beside them, rather than behind them. No speech could have expressed the change more clearly. The crisis did not end Charles' reign, and it did not crown William before his time. It ended the dangerous belief that strength required silence. The monarch kept his crown. The prince accepted duty without taking his father's place, and the queen recovered trust through honesty. The hidden file revealed weakness, but truth saved the family from collapse. In choosing openness over pride, they made the monarchy steadier, more human, and ready for what came next. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.